these types of questions can be really a headache. So we have 200 liters of the solution. 30% is acid, which means that 60 liters is acid, and then the remaining is water. So Atul replaces 20% of the solution with water. So we'll replace each one of these with water. Of course, the water will remain the same if you replace 20% of that portion. So water would still remain the same. Here, we will have 80% of this would remain as acid. So that we'll have acid would be 48, 12 would be water. So I'm kind of just doing it right here, replacing the pieces individually. Then we replace 10% of the resulting solution with acid. So the acid part will remain as acid. And this part, 10%, so we'll get 1.2 will become acid, and the remaining, which would be 10.8, would be the water. Here, 10% would be replaced with acid, so we'll get 14 liters of acid, and then remaining 126 would be water. And then finally, we replace 15% with water. So the water piece will remain the same because we're just replacing it with water. And here, the acid will then be 85% because the remaining would then be water. Same thing here, 85%, and then 85% acid remaining. The rest of it is, which is 48 times 0.15 is water. And I'm not worried about that right now because the question is eventually to find the percent of acid. So the amount of acid left at this final stage would be these three added. And you'll see they're all being multiplied by 0.85. So I add the remaining values. 48 plus 14 is 62, and then 63.2. So that's the amount of acid left. So I will compute that, 63.2 times 0.85. And I get 53.72 liters. So percent of acid would be divided by 200 because the total volume remains the same. And that is equal to 26.86% acid. And that's nearest to 27, which is choice D. So, yeah, I mean, this is how I found it to be the easiest, is kind of just to divide these into individual parts. And as I'm replacing, whether by acid or water, you find out the other component being replaced in that percentage. So see if this makes sense to you. I found this to be the easiest way to approach this question. So summarize, the answer is D.